Topps and Fanatics have cancelled a sponsorship with a content creator because they did not like what this content creator had to say about their business within a post. This is, very interesting because I think it goes to some of the things we talked to last week with influencers, but there's a few things I want to tie into with regards to the petition we spoke to last week, but more importantly, to this buyback program, because there's some snarky comments coming from some people that I think tie into this story of maybe some people being paid off and we don't know that they actually are. So please, just bear with me as we do talk to it all. Now, this relates to Mario Alejandro, who is a big content creator on Twitter. He does a lot of really cool stuff when it comes to the baseball card space. He does a lot of things like over here, content creator. He's an award-winning writer. He's a journalist by trade, is my understanding. He's an insider, guru, expert investor. Essentially does a lot of stuff for the hobby. Gives a lot of really good commentary on collections, but then also some hanky-panky. And he was one of the main people that we referenced when it came to this duplicate superfractor issue with Topps. And somebody clapped back at him because he came out and said that he liked the buyback program, how it was really good to see Topps sort of come out and do this, from the get-go and put prices on some of the cards that maybe are higher than they should be. And he had somebody say, well, how can you be praising them, right? Like, this is a good thing from Topps, but they still need hate on them for, doing the mistake in the first place. And what Mario came out and said caught a few people off guard because we weren't aware that he was sponsored by Fanatics or Topps in some capacity. He said, I've been at the forefront of reporting the blooper fractors on Twitter for 2 weeks now. I'm not a Fanatics apologist. Since you brought it up, Topps and Fanatics agreed to a sponsorship with me and after 2 weeks backed out. That's what happens when you dare to call out Michael Rubin for the Robertson cut signature debacle. I personally think that this was all marketing done to generate even more attention and sell even more of their product. I think he's referring to the buyback program there. But the specific Robinson, if you guys want the reference, is the Jackie Robinson 1/1 cut relic, or auto, I should say, that we saw a few months ago that Mario referred to, that was with Antoine Griezmann, a very famous soccer player, and very much looked like it was a loaded box. What he alludes to here is that he essentially implied that it was a loaded box, as he says over here. He magically pulled a 1/1 Jackie Robinson. This hit should have been packed for a struggling local card store that's been in business for decades. Not a millionaire. This is a bad look for the hobby. He then references over here. This is the tweet that ended my Topps/Fanatics sponsorship deal. Ruben did comment on it, but behind the scenes, I was sleeping with the fishes. Now, the reason why I want to talk about this is because that's a pretty clear-cut example there of Fanatics and Topps trying to control the narrative, i.e. they've got somebody that they've decided they want to pay and sponsor and spruik their product, and then they've come out and said something, and then have said, you know what, we're not going to pay you anymore. And I think Fanatics and Topps are definitely well within their rights to do that, right? If somebody's paying you, they have, all the rights in the world to sort of cease paying you if you're talking negatively about them. And I think one lesson here for Mario is that maybe he should have communicated, or definitely should have communicated to Topps and Fanatics first with his grievances, right? You got to protect and respect that, relationship you should have. Not protect, I meant the word respect, right? You need to treat them with the respect for the fact they're paying you. Now, if you're still not happy with the response you get in private, obviously you still need to give a comment, so you can go ahead and do it then. But it's just interesting that we've got, a clear-cut example here of Fanatics and Topps cancelling a partnership with someone because they did not like what they had to say about their business. And then when we go to some of the things we've talked to in recent months when it comes to these backdoored cards from Topps and some of these other issues that, not really many within the community have actively talked about. And that's been something that we've talked to in videos, and many others have on things like Blowout forums as well, where you've got these really significant issues with Topps and Fanatics, and there doesn't appear to be a whole lot of people talking about it. So when we see that situation with Mario, does that then also mean we've got content creators out there that are sponsors and partnered, and Fanatics and Topps have essentially strong-armed them into saying nothing? Is that possible? Sure. It goes to the petition we spoke to last week from Ephus Pitch, right, where one of the key points, I think it was the third one, where he talked about we need transparency. We need Fanatics and Topps to come out and tell us every single content creator that they are paying, and they need to make it pretty clear to us as viewers. And the content creators need to also do that themselves, because it's unacceptable to sort of have that happening, right? It's unacceptable to have a content creator telling us that something is really, really good without disclosing they have a self-interest involved, right? And that content creator could be doing the right thing, right? They might not think they're doing anything wrong. They might be believing in what they are actually doing and saying. But we as a viewer need to know that, right? We need to know whether they're selling us something or telling it because they actually like what they're saying. And that's a fine line that people cross at times, like we saw with Mojo Sports and the whole Monopoly Prism debacle, right? Where he got given that box by Panini, but he didn't tell people that. He came out first and said, I'm pretty sure he bought the box at a local card store or show. And then people said, well, no, you got that from Panini. And then he came out and changed his story, right? There's stuff like that that is most certainly happening. And then you factor that in along with the situation with Mario, albeit just one other example. And then your brain starts trying to problem solve and figure out whether there's more of this sort of stuff happening than we actually know, right? You've got that example there with Mojo, albeit a small one, a pretty clear-cut example here of Mario having his Fanatics deal cancelled because he said something they didn't like. It's like, well, what else is sort of happening out there? It ties to what I alluded to a little bit earlier with the whole backdoored cards and people not communicating that and not talking about that at all. Then all of a sudden, only really talking about the top situations when Tops comes out with a response. I find this whole buyback situation really interesting, and I think it interlinks with the things and the themes that I just talked to, because there are some people out there on Instagram right now that are pointing the finger at tinfoil people, and I think it's in jest for the most part, but there's a couple of people out there that I think it's not, and they're saying and pointing the finger at people that are questioning this sort of stuff and holding these businesses accountable, i.e. people like me, which I find pretty interesting. You've got people that are not commenting on this duplicate issue until, a solution was put out, which is fine. People are well within their rights to do it. But I find it then very strange that when they do talk about it, they also feel like they need to do a bit of a dig and, twist a knife a little bit in some of these people that are tinfoil hat thinking. Like, why does that need to be done? Is that because it's part of the same story of the themes that we just talked about? Are these people, on that company payroll? I think that's something that we sort of need to think through when we see people talk like that. Why does you praising Tops and Fanatics for coming out and doing something positive mean you also then need to put content creators down that are the ones that have called this stuff out in the first place, that has resulted in Tops and Fanatics coming out and doing the thing that they, did in the end, right? We've seen it happen a lot. We saw it with the whole card porn situation as well, where, a number of content creators, including primarily the likes of AOH Sports and Sports Card Radio and myself, putting out content about this person and seeing things that we didn't like, right? And sort of, things firing in our brains saying, well, that's a bit suspicious, that's suspicious. And then eventually things aggregated into what it did. And the same sort of thing happened there where people were basically saying, you guys are idiots, you guys don't know what you're talking about. It's almost like they think that, when you're asking these kinds of questions, it's done like you're throwing darts at a dartboard or whatever the saying is, right? You're just seeing what sticks. It's like, that's not, how it works. And when you present it the way you do, you're sort of discrediting what these guys are doing, and because they're right a lot more than they're wrong. So I just went on a mini rant there, but you guys get the gist of what I'm trying to say. I just find it odd that you've got, an example here, clear-cut example of Fanatics and Tops controlling the narrative. You've then got people coming out and praising Tops, but not talking about the other issues. Why is that sort of happening? Whilst they're also praising Tops, they're putting down the people that have pushed Tops into a position where they need to come out and talk about things. So again, why are they doing that? And then the concern comes, you've got Fanatics and Tops owning the whole value chain, right? They're probably going to pick up a grader at some point. They have full control over the production and supply of trading cards. If they've got content creators on their payroll, and we don't know that, look at that, cause for concern there, right? There's a lot of information control, a lot of misinformation that could be going on that we don't know about, which is why we need transparency. And if anybody's out there that is sponsored by Fanatics or Tops and they're not telling us, then you're a terrible person, in my opinion. If you've got a sponsorship in general and you're not telling people, then again, you are a terrible person, because it goes to the things we've talked to when it came to the Kurt's card care situation and people collating cards and not disclosing it and some of these other issues, right? They're not telling you things for a reason. They either think they're going to be judged unfairly, or, they're doing something disingenuously, that they're saying things that they don't actually believe. And I just find it odd that there are some people out there that are not doing that, aka what Mojo Sports did in at least that one example with the whole Monopoly Prism situation. I think there's a few people out there that do a good job with disclosing they're sponsored, right? Neo Cards and Comics does a great job. So does Dustin, the Sports Card Dad, right? They talk to their sponsors all the time, right? In terms of their videos, right? They make it pretty clear that they're sponsored. But like I said, if there's people out there that are getting paid by Fanatics and they're not telling us, that's a big bloody problem, because we as viewers deserve to know whether the things you're saying are things that you feel and believe, or you're just saying them because you're getting paid. And I want to be very clear again, I don't have an issue with people being sponsored. Part of the reason why I'm not sponsored is to avoid situations like Mario, right? I'm never going to not say things that I think need to be said, right? So if I did have a sponsor, I'd probably lose it pretty quickly. But the second a sponsor tried to tell me what I could and couldn't say, I'd make that very clear to you guys in a video. And I really wish more people did that. Now, we had people last time when we talked to this influencer sucking situation, and they said, no sponsors ever told me I didn't couldn't say this or didn't say that. I think Neo Cards and Comics is one of them. And again, that's very fair, right? Because not every sponsor is going to do stuff like that. But we've got a clear-cut example here of Fanatics doing so, right? Maybe they didn't tell him what he could or couldn't say, but he said something that he shouldn't have, and they ceased the partnership, which again is something they're well within their rights to do. And technically, you can't really talk out against the person paying you, so I can understand where they're coming from. The bigger question comes to the things I talked to earlier. Are they strong-arming people into not talking about things in general? Or are there content creators out there that are partnered with Fanatics and Tops and are seeing things they don't like, but they're not talking out against it in fear of having, what happened to Mario happen to them, right? In the back of their mind, well, they're thinking this thing from Tops is really shit, but if I say it, they're going to stop paying me. So I need that money, so I'm going to not say it, right? Is there some of that happening as well? I think, yes, there is. Just based on the fact that we've got people talking about things that Panini do wrong, right? There are news channels that focus in on things that Panini does wrong. There are people that put out gotcha content and watchdog content about Panini, but then certain things happen, tops to Tops, and they're not saying it either, right? Or they're just waiting for a solution to come to light. And just to be clear here, I'm not talking about Sports Card Data. I'm not talking about Neo. I'm not talking about Sports Card Radio. I'm not talking about OH. I'm not going to name, others. And if you ask me who you think I'm talking about, I'd like you guys to try and figure it out down in the comments below. But I just find it odd. So again, you might ask, Daniel, why did you put out this video? It's for that reason. I'm not trying to shit on Mario for coming out and shitting on Tops and losing his sponsorship. I'm not trying to shit on Fanatics or Tops for doing that in that one instance. I'm trying to just ask the question about the bigger picture here. This is something that we need to be thinking about, either to have you guys see this video and say, well, I think this content creator is getting paid by Fanatics. What do you think, Daniel? In the comments below, or at least put it out there to make people aware that we at least have one example of Fanatics and Tops doing this. And I also want to bring the attention to the content creators on Instagram that are praising Fanatics, but then at the same time shitting on, the watchdogs, when the watchdogs are the ones that are sort of, getting us to the positive position anyway. So it is what it is. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers.